Norsgard, the 22mm miniatures game. First of all, I would like to share my excitement about its release and how I got into it. 2 to 3 years back, I was finally getting time playing an RPG running one. And my favorite race was always the green mean half-orc, the misunderstood monster and an unlikely hero. One would think that there would be plenty of orc miniatures to choose from, but whenever I looked, I saw only disfigured hunchbacks or insane savages, so unlike the noble savior that was my character. After looking the internet, I saw one of the first Norsgard miniatures, which was the first Templar. I believe he was the first, probably. I never asked Pavel about it. He was there along with Varkov and another Templar, which was just excellent. He was an excellent miniature for my D&D character. He had a shield, wore plate armor, and had a weapon selection between a spear or a sword. This was Norsgard in its probably early years, when they were still figuring out the proper scale of the models. It wasn't until a year that I found Pavel bragging to somebody on an online shop forum about Norsgard. I was dumbstruck that all that time, just few hundred kilometers from Warsaw, Pavel was making the best looking orcs I have ever seen, with a rule set and plans for a game release. With the old models, while the old models weren't for sale anymore, to scale and other issues, basically he told me that those cool orcish Templars just, well, they weren't up to scale. Well, if you look closely, basically Varkov here, who should be the orc hero, is a little bit smaller. Some of his elements of his armor are, well, they are very close to the concept art. Let's say that at the moment. It was a concept art from Genzeman. You can find him on DeviantArt. I will put a link in the description to him. But you probably already know him from the L5R CCG or other sources. Some miniatures were too small, some were too big, and they basically had to reinvent the whole line to fit the game. Well, Pavel is a perfectionist, so he knows best. But the game benefited from it. I hope that in the future I will be able to buy Varkov and other Templars that will be up to Pavel's high quality standards. Basically, I almost already ordered the 2 starter boxes, and Pavel was so kind that he gifted me both Varkov and the first Templar, that he had spares from the pre-alpha edition of the game, and I am very thankful for him. These are excellent miniatures despite not being up to par. And this was my first step into Norsgard in February 2014. A lot of time has passed since then, but now let me tell you about this little marvel. Yes, so Norsgard is a game using 22mm models that represents basically a hero unit. It's very much like my beloved Anime Tactics, which uses because Norsgard also uses like a very small number of miniatures maybe not as small as Anima Tactics. It's like between 4 to 14, depending on what faction you get. For example, the Howling Horde can use the the most models in the game. Like they have a limit of 14, and the Scarlet Watch can field up to 10 at max. But these are like enormously scaled battles, so you probably will be using only up to 7 or 6 orcs and 10 tribesmen. So yeah, it's a very small game, very skirmish-like. The game is played on a smaller table. It's 24 by 30, so it's a step away from the usual 48 by 48 inches. And there are 3 factions in the game. First are the famous orcs that call themselves the Order of the Ram. They are the noble paladins that swore to shield the Rams of Isbran, the game setting, against the undying elven threat. There are still no elves in the game, but there was an Indiegogo campaign which wanted to introduce elves as a faction. And yes, the elves are more like the evil undead of the game. So yeah, that's this twist that the orcs are the noble paladin and the elves are the corrupt. Well, all of the orcs are using the 40mm base and range from heavy armored knights like Barkov here, or the First Templar, or the Crimson Champion. I don't know if you can see like his big Warcraft 3 grunt-like shoulder plate. Of course, the most heavy armor knight would be the Niflgaard. I don't think I'm spelling that correctly. Well, he's still work in progress, so I can't show you much. And the other orc units are magic users, sages, and novices that were mostly light armor, like the more common trooper in the Order of Ram the Fallen. Well, it's enough to say that the orcs are very close to how World of Warcraft portrays them. They all have normal backs, unlike the Warhammer orcs, or aren't ugly and grotesque like those in Lords of the Rings. They're actually quite handsome and very muscular, which I absolutely adore. I love painting muscles, especially if they're very, very well sculpted. But let's look at the other faction. The second one is the Morg tribes. Well, picture Conan having very, very angry sex with Red Sonja, and let their babies be forced to live in northern wastes, where you have an option between living in a frozen cave or a damp and dark swamp. So this faction weeds out all the weak and is full of muscular men led by unstoppable demon-possessed Amazon-like femme fatales. So, as you can see, one of the magic users from the mock trick on the cover. And let's just stop for a moment and let's put the cat out of the bag. Basically, all of the of the commanders, the elite troopers of the Morg tribe are women. All of the grunts are men. So let's just sink in. I am totally ecstatic about it. And if you want to, paint some very beautiful men and women wearing nothing at all, or close to nothing, then, well, the Morg tribe, the Howling Horde, might be to your liking. All of them are on a 30mm base and focus more on overwhelming the opponent rather than outsmarting him. Basically, having a numbers advantage and how you utilize those numbers is a very big thing in Norsgard. Like, orcs are very small, they have to fight they cannot charge the enemy straight away. The Howling Horde wants to encircle you, trap you, use their advantage, have the most warriors up there to fight you. So the third faction, which I don't have, let me check if there's a good picture here. Ah, close. Very close. It's the Alliance of the Bat. Well, let's put it that way. It's a rather new faction, at least for now, which goes back to the very first days of Norsgard. Its name, the Alliance of the Bat, it's not an army of vampires. You see orcs, the undead, the undead elves, and human savages have been roaming around the highlands, which are home of the ancient dwarves, a very old race that is dying. And basically there's this new race, the Wolfkin, which are the werewolves, and this is a very new faction, new race. They have been relatively weak, and they were driven out of every place they wanted to invade, so they don't have there's no room for them. They are going to be extinct in few centuries, much like the dwarves. So these two factions basically combine their forces. The dwarves are educating the Wolfkin, teaching them the ways of the dwarves, so that their legacy will live on. Basically, you have the werewolves, which are the main melee combatants, and and magic users of the Alliance of the Bat, and then you have dwarves, which have the power of gunpowder and boomsticks, along with spear tactics and resilience. This is a very fun faction because you don't see many ranged combat in Norsgard. The Order of Ram doesn't have close to none ranged attacks, aside from spells or the scout. Morg tribe has some, but it's mostly like I throw a poison spear at you to give you penalties, and then we kill you immediately. Like, Alliance of the Bat relies heavily on gunpowder and something to expect them to use. As far as As far as I know, they use 30mm bases along with 50mm because the werewolves are very big miniatures, much bigger than the orcs. Well now, the setup of the game is very simple. You build your army by agreeing on a certain number of gold coins, for example 200. For the gold you buy your commander, for the orders the the orcish made Dark Guard, and the Morg tribe has the War Chief. Then you buy grunts, some specialists, you outfit them with some additional equipment, spells, that kind of thing. And sometimes you can even buy them some backstory training. You can't buy that for the Morg tribe because they have other things, but for the orcs you can buy your whole army a very special training exercise, and for the Alliance of the Bat you can buy them a legacy, a fortress legacy, because all of the dwarves and the Wolfkin, they are training in those fortresses, and each fortress has its own legacy. It's a very fun mechanic, something I think that the game lacked in the alpha rules, especially for the orcs, because the orcs have have very little options to choose from. Like you you build your orcish horde based on the units you take, rather than what items they take. So yes, so that was a very nice nice idea from Pavel. He basically got rid of my biggest complaint about my favorite faction. Oh my god, my throat is killing me. Okay, so about the gameplay. The game uses alternate activation, where, much like in anime tactics, players take turn activating. Usually only one miniatures, and they are doing the movement, doing some shooting, charging, or casting a spell. Whatever you need. Then letting their opponent do the same with one of his still active units. This might sound very familiar to all of you skirmish enthusiasts, but how Norsgard handles the combat falls more into the CCG crowd with Magic the Gathering, L5R and other games. Basically, the part of the game where when you're shooting, charging, casting spells is one of a big setup before the combat phase. Range attacks and spells, while still viable, are used mostly to soften the enemy rather than blow him to pieces. Positioning and utility usage is key here because the combat phase is brutal and the rules force you to grab at any advantage possible before the combat phase begins. During the combat step, all units are divided in little pairs. So basically, especially at the end of the game, you have this very big cluster where everybody wants to kill everybody, and you try to pair each combatant to form up as many small combats as possible. What you want to do in this combat segment to have the biggest number of enemy combatants, fighting one model, because this game basically hates you if you don't have the numbers advantage, which the orcs usually don't have, but they are very strong and they know make up for it. Now the combat. The combat is a very special mechanic that if you kill a model, for example, let's see. Oh yeah, this one just didn't glue himself very much. So, if for example this guy, supported by these two fellows, kills poor Barkov, then he can move 3 inches and support this guy. It's called Varia Victis. It's extremely brutal if you manage to use it. So the person who wins the initiative can basically declare the order of which combat resolves first. So if you have a very brilliant commander leading your army, you should focus on on resolving the combats that are the least important first, just so that this big, very dangerous fight won't destroy your whole battle plan. Another very important thing about combat is that you during it you choose combat stances. What does it mean? Basically, there are 3 combat stances. The defensive, which focuses on accuracy and not getting hit by penalizing yourself in the damage department. The second one is normal. It's basically balance between everything. You don't change your stats, nothing. It's mostly used for if you want to deal some damage, soften up the enemy. The third one is the brutal strike, which favors actually killing the enemy and rolling on the damage table. And now let's talk about brutality of combat. Basically, each character has this health bar. You see white orbs, yellow orbs, and red orbs. Each damage you take will cross out 1 orb, and the last orb crossed will indicate what special effect from your damage you will take. Basically, the whites are very minor. You can get dazed, and maybe something else. Yellow would penalize your abilities. Maybe you'll be unable to use some skills for a time. And red can give you permanent penalties and can basically kill you. So it's very important to remember that even if you go all the way to 0 hit points, you're still able to fight, and the enemy cannot kill you unless he rolls death on the damage table. I think they're oh yeah, here they are. Excellent job from Pavel that he added this to the game. It speeds up things exponentially. So basically, to kill the enemy, you need to roll 6 or more on the red damage table, and if you're using a two-handed weapon, you have some special ability that lets you add a little modifier to this roll, or if the enemy has 0 hit points, you're basically doing extra damage to him. This will also add up to this roll. So basically, you most likely will have like between 30 to 10% chance of surviving this attack, or 0. Sometimes you have 0 chance. What does it mean for the game? Basically, it's impossible to steamroll the enemy into the ground. Well, it is possible, theoretically, but you will basically need to focus on a very isolated unit. In order to kill him in turn 1, you will need the amount of planning that takes that basically wins games in War Machine, that you're performing a caster kill on every unit in order to kill it in like one move. It is possible, but also very, very difficult. What you want to do is soften up the enemy with range attacks, isolate him, then charge him, usually with more than one model. Maybe force him into using not a defensive stance, so you have much more, much less. It's less harder to actually harm him, and you want to be using a two-handed weapon, and maybe you have some kind of special ability that will maybe let you kill him in one swing. So yeah, so it's basically this hard to quickly kill a unit, and we are talking about grunt units, not specialists, not heroes. So yeah, dying in this game is difficult, but it gets easier when all of the units just come together and slaughter each other in mass combat. I've played the alpha version of the game. I haven't played this one. It didn't change much. It added some things. It removed some of the really I wouldn't have to say confusing stuff, because the system is fairly simple. I would say that there were some things that made the game last longer, maybe silly, maybe sillier. They're gone now. It's a very fun and short game, but it's not the main dish here. Norsgard is less Infinity and Malifaux and more Blood Bowl, and by that I mean the only proper way to play Blood Bowl is League mode. End of story. In the rulebook, this chapter on the campaign play, which is basically the main dish here. The only proper way to play this game, I believe, is the campaign play. So if you have at least 3-person group that plays Norsgard in your local area, you're doing yourself a very big disservice if you don't play the campaign mode. Basically, you have here the XP system, which is, I believe, called the Renown system. I don't remember. But you acquire gold. It lets you buy new units, outfit them with new weapons, maybe change something. You gain XPs, which give you new abilities to your units. It forces you to name each one of your guys, from the lowly tribesman to the commander of your warband. If you die, or if like something major happens, that you kill the enemy commander or you suffer a wound, you're on the random table, which one is general, and each of the army have their own special event tables that you might roll on, and something happens to the character. Of course, you can die, Yes, on 1 to 5 is death, and something very good happens on the higher you get. So, like my favorite was that your enemies spare your life, and basically he was very compassionate to you, and you have sworn an oath that you will not harm any of the enemy units in the next combat. So you can damage them, but you cannot kill them. At least that's one model.